Spray and pray wasted power. For quite some time, I felt that the way the industry approaches power is less than the optimal. Techniques such as clock gating and power gating have been used to reduce the amount of the unnecessary activity as leakage. But is there more activity that does not contribute to unintended action? While unnecessary activity may be unimportant in the functional sense, it all represents the power that is being wasted. Some power is intentionally consumed in the hope that it increases performance like branch prediction, and while that is wasted in some cases, it provides benefit in others. At the micro level, and power is wasted from glitches, while the macro level, their code out there is being produced and ignored. A gross example of this happens on my PC every day. The screens go to sleep, and yet the GPUs continue cracking to deliver content to them. Why? Quite simply, there is no back pressure telling anything when work is unnecessary. One region that promotes this kind of waste is the predominant verification strategy being used to constrain the random test pattern generation. This was seen as a huge advance back in the 1980s because it allowed the stimulus to be created automatically instead of all verification runs being manually created and maintained, which was a huge task. Constrained random used human effort to create models that were then used to generate stimulus, but they spread stimulus into the design and hoped it would do something useful. Because the stimulus was random, a model of the system has to be generated so that if you could see what happened was correct. Another advance was also required coverage that would give an indication if anything useful was happening in the design. From this result, it allowed verification folks to decide if a particular random seed increased the design coverage and if it should be again for regression runs. In some cases, nothing actually cares if the right activity is being created, and unnecessary activity is actually an advantage if it checks off more coverage. As design sizes have grown, this methodology has become increasingly wasteful and difficult to get the required coverage. Additionally, the fact that the coverage metrics are only proxies for actual functionality makes it difficult to tie things back to the requirement specification. Even more troubling is that if the coverage is not directly linked to the result checking, the coverage has absolutely no meaning. It is checking off a box without actually having done the work. About a decade ago, EDA companies and standard bodies attempted to create a new verification methodology that would start from the target goals of the device and work out how to make that happen in the design. This effort was called portable stimulus, a name whose historical context was dubious and which only adds to the confusion about what it can do. But the semiconductor industry does not like the change, and it will resist any changes until there is no alternative. So chips have been limited by the power and heat for some time. As the thermal density of new technology nodes increases, an increasing number of designs contain large amounts of dark silicon. This is necessary to absorb the excess heat from the neighboring elements. When looking at the power crunch, it is happening in multiple ways. At the macro level, the industry would rather spend more time and money removing the heat from the package rather than reducing the amount of heat generated. At the design level, power, energy, thermal is still treated as a second-class citizen. Back to the portable stimulus with PSS. The end goal is defined first. Perhaps you want to see data move from point A to point B. A suitable tool will find out how to make that happen. It starts with the necessary action and looks at the precondition for that start, and works out how to make those happen, which in turn creates more preconditions until you satisfy everything necessary to complete the goal. That creates a reverse cone of activity, similar to that developed by former verification tools. However, the former is trying to prove that something is always true or false, whereas the PS is trying to find examples that satisfy the goal. When a stimulus set generated by the PSS is played through the design, it should achieve the desired goal. If not, there is an error in the design, but it's also possible that it generates additional activities outside the intended cone of influence. This could be an unnecessary and wasteful activity. Now let's move on to the power. This could be an important tool for power optimization. If the activity generated by the simulation is compared to the required activity to accomplish the desired goal as generated by something like a portable stimulus tool, then the unnecessary activity is potential power wastage. It should at least be a candidate for investigation. There will be some activity that is ground noise, like counters being used to create an asynchronous event, and of course that may also trigger software action, but they are at a much higher level of activity and should be easy to isolate. So what is needed is a form of coverage to be implemented in the design side that can be compared to the coverage generated by PSS. Finding wasted energy and reducing saves in so many ways, and if less power is consumed, less cooling is required. If just a fraction of time and money being spent on cooling was invested in reducing energy consumed, a lot of progress could be made. Okay, I read this article, Spray and Pray Wastes Power. Thank you for your time. See you next time.